doing well and staying healthy and safe during these times. We'll start our meeting pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place virtually today, Thursday, April 28th, 2022, starting at 10:07 via WebEx. I'll begin with roll call, starting with our district managers and chairs from our distinctive community boards, followed by our council members and their representatives. Thank you all for your attendance. I'll begin with Community Board 1, Madam Chair Parks. Okay, CB2.
Morning, Madam Deputy. Ralph Acevedo, District Manager.
Good morning, Ralph. How are you? Great to see you.
Likewise, thank you. I'm well. Hope you're well as well. Thank you.
Thank you. CB3. CB4.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. Paul Phillips.
Robert Hernandez, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Paul. Great to see you. CB5.
Good morning, Deputy Borough President and everyone. This is Ken Brown, District Manager, Board 5.
Good morning, Ken.
Morning.
CB6.
Good morning, everyone. Carla Leon.
Good morning, Carla. CB7. CB8.
Good morning and happy Thursday. Laura Spalter, CB8.
Good morning, Laura. CB9. CB10.
Good morning, District Manager.
Good morning, Shirley.
CB11
CB11.
from CB10.
Good morning, Matt. CB11.
Harriet Lasky, Community Coordinator for Community Board 11. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. CB12.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. This is Dr. Michael Burke, Chairman of Community Board 12.
Good morning,
everyone. George.
Good morning, George. Thank you all for your attendance. I'll begin with our City Council members. District 8, Madam Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala.
I know we had Jose Rodriguez.
Yes, Jose Rodriguez here, Chief of Staff, Deputy Speaker Diana Ayala. Thank you so much.
Good morning, Jose. District 11, CM Dinowitz.
Hi, Madam Deputy. Enzo Manzano here from CM Dinowitz's office.
Good morning, Enzo. District 12, CM Riley. District 13, CM Velasquez.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Adrian from CM Velasquez's office.
Good morning, Adrian. District 14, CM Sanchez. District 16, District 15, skipping one here, CM Feliz. District 16, CM Stevens.
Good morning, everyone. Kate here from Council District 16.
Good morning, Kate. District 17, CM Salamanca. District 18, CM Farias.
Good morning, everyone. Randy Melman here, Chief of Staff to Councilmember Farias.
Good morning, Randy. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge our agency partners. Please feel free to identify yourselves. I see some new faces. Don't jump all at once. I see Alexander, 10 is raised.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Ayaz from the Department of Consumer Worker Protection.
Good morning. It's Effie Artisoni from DEP.
Michael Mccray, Acting Executive Deputy Commissioner for Mental Hygiene at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene.
Welcome. I see folks from DOT as well.
Good morning.
Great, wonderful. And last but not least, I just want to acknowledge my colleagues at Borough Hall. We have different directors from different units, and so thank you for being here. As many as you know, we have a hefty agenda today, so I'll briefly share an overview and the run of show. First up, we have the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, who will present on overdose protection centers, followed by the Department of Sanitation, along with our partners at the Sanitation Foundation. We're here to discuss the exciting Bronx cleanup series, and we'll follow that by announcements, so we'll get right to it. As we mentioned earlier, we welcome Dr. Michael Mccray, the current Acting Executive Deputy Commissioner at the Division of Mental Health and Hygiene, who will be briefing us on the current healthcare crises, the importance of overdose protection centers, harm reduction and responses, as well as the public health approach to the overdose epidemic here in our city. Thank you, Dr. Mccray, for your important work and your dedication and willingness to inform us and equip us with the knowledge and resources that we need as we work collectively to heal our communities. And so we turn the virtual stage to you, and thanks again for being with us today.
And thank you for having me. Again, my name is Dr. Michael Mccray. I am the Acting Executive Deputy Commissioner for Mental Hygiene at the Department of Health. I believe we have a slide deck. And I believe someone from my team is here to put that up, or do we have
Let me just get it up for you 1 second.
All right. All right. All righty.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Let's go down to the next slide. Okay. So, yes, I'm here to talk today about the Overdose Prevention Centers, otherwise known as OPCs. And I want to start out with a framing here. I mean, we've been collecting data on accidental overdoses since the early 2000s. If you look at this trajectory right here, you see in 2020 was our highest year on record, for overdoses across the city. Our provisional data for 2021 it indicates that we're on track or may surpass this. The time we see the time as being now to really address this critical need. Between 2019 and 2020, you saw about 500 increase of 500, over 500 deaths. Next slide. If we look at density maps of rates of overdoses across, the city, what we see here is our rates of overdose are highest in the Bronx and in Harlem. Of the top 5 places across the city, 3 are in the Bronx, 1 is in East Harlem, and then the other is in Stapleton, St. George. If you look at this map and look at ethnicity actually across the city as well, you see that the areas that are darkest on this are also the ones that are most heavily Black and Brown communities. So we see this health inequities across the board, across health, physical health, and behavioral health indicators. Next slide. So what is harm reduction? We really have, the health department has been very intentional around promoting and really educating folks around harm reduction. So I'm going to go a little bit into harm reduction, kind of what it, high level framing, and then go more deeply into the OPCs. Next slide. So two kind of pillars that we focus on in harm reduction is one around stigma. We know that you can see right here, even more than the drug itself, the stigma, how people view people who use drugs, impacts people's emotional, internal feelings that they have towards themselves. I think we have an opportunity here to really educate, reduce stigma around people who use drugs. And I would imagine that most, if not all of us, know someone in our families or in our close circle who identifies as a person who uses drugs, and maybe has even died as a result of drugs. So really, this effort right here is really around reducing stigma, having conversations about this, getting people connected in a thoughtful, humane, less stigmatizing manner. The second area is around equity. So equity is really about everyone having the same level of access, despite not everyone having the same advantage kind of coming in. So one of the principles of harm reduction is really around focusing on equity, people's access, to services that they need and that they want. Next slide. So harm reduction is a set of practical strategies, and it really is aimed at really reducing negative consequences associated with substance use. We think of it as it's a social justice kind of movement, and we believe in and respect human rights and people's ability to make thoughtful decisions for themselves if they have the ability to do so. And we want to incorporate the spectrum of substance of strategies, from safe use to managed use to abstinence, right? We look at this span. There's more than one kind of way to address this challenge. And we really are meeting people where they are. Again, we think anecdotally, people who use drugs are ready to stop using drugs when they're ready to stop using drugs. How we can do that is creating a space to having conversations, building trust, and so that they're more likely to engage in longer term services that support long-term recovery. But everyone's not there, at all times. Next slide. So syringe service programs really paved the way for the overdose prevention centers. Again, this great quotation here from Kathleen Oliver, who's director of social service agencies of a social service agency. She said, by refusing to provide needles and syringes, what you're really saying to these people that these people are expendable, and you'd rather have them die of AIDS than give them needles. We do know people. This not only it's not just about death, right? It's about minimizing harm among people who are going to use. And also, I will also say that in terms of syringe service providers, this also highlights the idea that not only people who use drugs need clean syringes. This also extends to even people who are on insulin as well. Next slide. So what is our public health approach to the overdose epidemic here in New York City? We'll think about it along 5 lines. The first is we know what's happening. So our data is central to really thinking about how we respond in terms of our policy initiatives, as well as our programmatic work. We also aim to prevent or reduce risky use. So in this way, we've raised awareness around fentanyl test strips and fentanyl in general, and increased overdose risk. Our third area is around preventing complications of substance use. So we've expanded our harm reduction services across 15 SSPs. We've implemented a peer-led non-fatal overdose response at 14 EDs, known as Relay. There's a program called Relay. And we've distributed over 100,000 naloxone kits citywide annually. That's annual. What else? I want to increase effective treatment for opioid use disorders. So we've increased access to medication for opioid use disorders in clinical settings, and even established same-day BUP access to those who are unstably housed. And in general, increasing recovery support, so promoting and expanding our peer workforce. We know that the peers are kind of a critical piece of this work, and so we're really promoting and expanding that workforce in general. Next slide. So more about this overdose prevention centers. Next slide. And it's just one of our public health strategies. This is the front page of the New York Times when when the OPCs opened up. Noticeably, you see here they call it first supervised drug injection sites, right? And we have intentionally avoiding that because it's more than supervised drug injection. These are overdose prevention centers. They offer a wide range of services that include drug injection, but also counseling, other wraparound supports as well. So we really are thinking about it more broadly and not just minimizing it to safe injection. Next slide. So the OPCs, they're hygienic, they're professionally supervised. They're clinical kind of centers. In those spaces, we provide education, equipment. There's oversight of drug consumption practices, and really we are again connecting people to all different kinds of services. Lots of people have ideas that that you go in there and it's going to be everyone who's just using drugs, but you don't even have to use that service if you go into the OPC, because there are people who can provide you with light touch counseling, connection to housing, connection to mental health services, substance use services. So there are and other kind of wraparound services. There's a robust menu that's there. So yeah, the supervised consumption piece is only one part of the continuum for people who use drugs that are available in the centers. Next slide. So we know that science supports this. We have over 30 years, over 100 localities for OPCs. We know that OPCs reduce overdose deaths in the neighborhood. Even here in New York City, we have already averted over 200 potential overdoses across our centers. We also know that we see a reduction in public syringe litter and public drug use. We also know that we see a reduction in drug-related crime, and that there's no increase in serious crime. And we know that we're serving people who are not in contact with other essential health services, as I mentioned before, social services, mental health, physical health, substance use services. And we see an increase in people's connection to primary care and drug treatment through these centers. The picture that's here, it actually shows, it's a picture of the OPC. So you see 3 booths that are there. And there's a mirror in each booth. So the person who's there is able to see who's behind them while being supervised and monitored, by clinical staff, who are also checking in with them on a regular basis. Next slide. Okay. Over 60 jurisdictions worldwide have shown that this is an effective strategy. Again, like I said, 30 years of evidence. There have been 0 deaths at the OPCs worldwide in 30 years. And again, then we have had over 2,000 overdose deaths in 2020, 2,062 overdose deaths in 2020 across the city. And there have been 0 worldwide at an OPC. And we know that there's support and interest across the United States. Several different cities are, want to know how to do this. They're interested in this, and we're really excited to be thinking about this as a strategy, that people can use across the country, but specifically here in New York City. Next slide. So we know that OPC saves lives, and that is a measure of success. We know that it improves the health of New Yorkers in general. I want to end off with a quotation that I find particularly impactful. Having a place to go where there's others around me, it can be uplifting and not only save my life if I were to overdose, but save my life in other ways. And to me, this highlights really the humanity that is brought when in the centers. They offer food, all kinds of essential services, showers, treating people with dignity and in a very humane way. And really, that's how they build their relationships with folks and eventually get them connected to long-term care. But it's by really treating people with humanity that we're able to really be saving lives in this very critical way at this critical time. I think that was the last slide. Yes. So I'm happy to take questions, but that's kind of a brief overview of kind of some of our harm reduction strategies and specifically the OPCs.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mccray, for this wealth of knowledge and breaking it down. I think you mentioned it as your first slide. Fighting the stigma is our first step, and so we thank you for breaking it down for us, and also sharing with us the research and that it's proven. And so we'll open up the virtual platform for questions. I know folks have concerns, questions, ideas, but it's as a collective that we'll be able to heal our brothers and sisters. So thank you so much for that presentation.
All right, and I do see a couple hands raised already. Just as a reminder, I don't see anyone who's connected only by phone, but just in case, you can raise your hand on a phone with *9. And as for the hands that are already raised in WebEx, Ken Brown, I saw yours first, so go ahead, Ken.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mccray. I think that this is a really important resource. One of the things I'm curious about is in other countries that have these sorts of facilities, what has been the community reaction to them setting sites up, like in the Netherlands and Canada? And how do you evaluate stigma and community acceptance or resistance to these sites in these other countries, given the different national stigmas and perception of substance abuse?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see that there are varied reactions across different localities and different spaces. I think what we are really striving for around kind of combating stigma is having these discussions, being in the different spaces like this with community members, talking about it, really thinking and really destigmatizing and dispelling myths. Lots of times there are just things that people believe or because we all have this way of many of us have ways of approaching it that it's like this it's stigmatizing, so it's kind of built into the way that we kind of address. Oh, hello. All right. It's kind of built into the way that we kind of think about it. And so what we're doing here is really trying to just provide accurate, truthful information, and really dispelling a lot of myths in terms of the stigma. I think your question around kind of measuring that, looking at that, how do we measure that, I think is much more challenging. And right now, we're just making every effort to connect with as many people around this, these services and the broader strategy of harm reduction.
I just think it's important to look at what predecessor initiatives are, particularly given different national contexts. The way that people and government approach this issue in Portugal is very different than how it is here. So I was just wondering, was there any kind of determination or analysis of other nations' experience setting up these sorts of sites that informed this initiative?
Yeah, so I'm happy to send kind of like a summary of the kind of the literature, just to kind of to kind of distill it for you guys. But like I said, it's been varied. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Ralph Acevedo, I saw your hand next. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Dr. Mccray, thank you so much for that presentation. If I'm not mistaken, you presented to my health committee a few months ago also about this. So it's really good information. OPCs, I think, are certainly needed. However, I have to go by examples that are in my district currently. So I have a needle exchange program in my district already. And although we know it's a need, I think there's issues surrounding their clientele in my district, in the community. I get a lot of complaints that these individuals are loitering in residential buildings and leave, even though it's a needle exchange program, they leave their syringes out on the streets. And there's a lot of issues that we have. So my question is mainly more about the service provider and holding them accountable in their communities, because this is a need. This is clearly a need. However, when it impacts and it burdens the local community, I think, you know, it's something where we're gonna get. I'm getting complaints about this, and we try our best to be transparent and supportive to the provider, but it only gets us so far. And my question now is, what will be done with these providers that are not being held accountable to the community that they're impacting? So it is a need, but yet it's a burden on the other community folks, the other local businesses. And this is something where, from experience, you know, though it's a need, there's so many other challenges and hurdles that present itself. You did not this, you know, I thought Ken was going to discuss that when he was describing it. He went international on us. I'm trying to keep it local here, you know, and you know, it's just something that, you know, on a weekly basis, I'm getting complaints from the residents and the other local commercial businesses that are relatively close in proximity to our needle exchange program, with just like their, you know, their clients are loitering all over the place. Um, they're actually, you know, using their syringes out in public, even though this is a needle exchange program where they can safely, one way or another, exchange needles. A lot of drug activity is occurring out in the streets also. So how can we hold the provider accountable to the community that this is going to impact? Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you. I certainly want to be clear that we want all of our providers to be good community, you know, good neighbors, and to be, you know, helping to, you know, improve, you know, kind of the situation. You know, the syringe. I mean, I'm happy to kind of talk offline about specifics, so we can kind of, you know, think about that. I like to kind of. I'm happy to think about that with you. I think, you know, all of the syringe service providers, you know, do some level of syringe cleanup, and so I think, you know, that is a kind of a piece around that, the syringe piece. I'm happy to talk to you about kind of the how we can improve kind of the flow, or think how to work with the providers. We want to be good community members and good partners. So that's certainly, we certainly never want to have a situation where we have more problems as a result of this service. One thing you mentioned was that, you know, there's obviously there's not a OPC in that area. But again, if OPC were in that area, this would provide a space for people to go and use drugs, as opposed to that kind of, you know, the public space. As we know, the, you know, OPCs, from the research, we know that OPCs, you know, does reduce the amount of public drug use. So again, that's even another piece where these people will be able to go inside. Folks will be able to go inside and use safely, discard, you know, and connect to other services if that were an option that were there. But I can definitely appreciate, you know, concerns around not having a good neighbor as a provider, and that's definitely not something that we want to see happen. So I'm happy to talk offline about that if you like.
Thank you, doctor. I appreciate the answer. And I think a majority of this does fall on the provider. Yeah, because that's something where we're bringing these concerns to their attention, and sometimes you know, it falls on deaf ears, and that's something going forward. You know, we certainly need to make sure that the provider knows exactly what community they'll be located in, and understanding the, you know, their concerns, and how to counter that. You know, that's my concern here with all of this. But thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Arlene Parks, I saw your hand next. Go ahead and unmute.
You. I just want to sort of piggyback on what Mr. Acevedo just spoke about. In my district, needles in St. Mary's Park, where individuals are able to, get these needles, and it is so bad in St. Mary's Park, where needles are all over the place. They put up boxes so that users can safely, you know, dispose of their needles, and that didn't help. And it's to the point where people can't enjoy that park. It's not safe. You got loitering all over the place. It's a feeder for people to sell drugs there, and it is impacting the quality of life for residents to enjoy their park. You have people openly shooting themselves, not in the park or any place, but openly on the street. And this is, you get complaints all the time. Children, there's a school right across the street. Children can't enjoy the park. They're seeing this, and you get complaints about it all of the time. So there has to be some accountability for the program if you're going to have it, but also you can't serve one constituency at the expense of the public and a community. It's a big issue. And so what is seriously being considered so that in attempting to save people's lives and having a program that is trying to address one population, that it doesn't significantly harm an entire community and the quality of life.
Again, yeah, this is never our intention to kind of, not, we want to improve and really speak to quality of life issues. Again, we're happy, we don't want to have bad providers or providers who are bad neighbors. I'm happy to kind of talk about how we can work with those providers to either be more connected, to the community, and understanding kind of that the community needs that. So I'm happy to kind of, again, talk offline about the specific provider that you're referring to. But I do, again, appreciate, the concern and that you're expressing here.
Thank you.
All right, I see George Torres had his hand raised next. George, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't want to be repetitive here, but I think I want to talk about what Ralph said and what Arlene just spoke about in a different sort of view or lens, in that, you spoke to this about equity and being in, our communities, Black and brown communities, are dealing the most with this. And I can understand that and I can appreciate it. But we're also trying to build up our communities. I worked at 1932 Arthur Avenue in the buildings department before I became a district manager 6 years ago. At that facility, or in the building right next door, which is on the corner of East Tremont and Arthur Avenue, they had VIP services. I think they're still there. And there was a McDonald's down the block. And this is true of every community, because I also worked as a chief of staff for District 17 in the South Bronx on 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. And we had, I think, 4 or 5 facilities. Way back then, it was like Narco Freedom, which I know is no longer around. They've been absorbed by other groups. But it was the same thing on 149th Street and 3rd Avenue. You have communities that are trying to build up businesses and local office space, and they're trying to get, develop themselves for better quality of lives for the people who live and work there. And I think we need to build into the contracts for these service providers more responsibility to care for their people, because that's the problem. They get their services and then they move on. And as a matter of fact, VIP did a very good job of ushering their people away from their property and into the local McDonald's or to the other places. East Tremont Park is right across the street from the buildings department. And when I would complain to them, because again, I'm not just a regular constituent, I kind of know this business, I've been around it for 20 years. I would make complaints to them and they said, oh, well, we did what our responsibility was. And, you know, to Ralph's point, people would have conversations. This is a local community board. I know that local council members reached out to some of these groups. And again, they were like, well, that's not our responsibility. I mean, we have Project Renewal. I know this is not a DOH facility on Bronx Boulevard in my district in Community Board 12. And we have a diversion center that's supposed to be coming online any day now at 3300 White Plains Road. And the fear there is that, you know, we're going to have the same situation. As a matter of fact, we were told by the NYPD and DOH that since it's a diversion center, these people would be picked up, the clients, they would be taken to the facility and they would be offered services. But there was no requirement from the provider to keep them there. And again, I think that that's a mistake because, you know, regardless of where they were picked up in the district, they were all being rerouted to White Plains Road and AD Avenue, which is where this facility is. And if you're not required to provide services, the client then knows what the game is. They're not stupid. They know that, hey, I don't have to be here. I don't have to take these services. I mean, back then, and I've heard that from the NYPD, these people they receive their treatments. And, you know, if they take it in pill form, they spit it back out and they try to sell it on the street. Again, I don't know if I shouldn't say that I don't know that that's not true. We know it's true because, again, we have categories of this, and the NYPD and I guess DOH and other people have tried to resolve these issues. But I just think sometimes, to your point about equity, is it fair for these communities of color, communities that are all in the Bronx, all 12 community boards in the Bronx are predominantly minority majority? Is it fair for us to have this burden and to shoulder this burden for the rest of the city of New York? This is the same argument we make with DHS facilities and the siting of these facilities. And I don't want to say that I take offense that, you know, the majority of the problem is here and that we have to shoulder it because it is our responsibility. That's not necessarily true. Again, with the diversion center, this was a DOH facility. They chose my community board, even though you've noted in your presentation there, we're not one of the worst in terms of drug treatment and facilities or the citing of these types of problems, because we're the number one. As a matter of fact, on the NYPD's chart, I think we were 12th on the list. So in terms of 911 calls for dealing with people who were either experiencing a mental breakdown or a drug-induced, you know, sort of paranoia, yet they cited the facility in my district. So again, my question is, I think you need to do more. You need to exhibit more responsibility and understanding to communities like ours when you're writing these contracts or these RFPs, so that you're providing, or these providers are providing, programming to keep their clients in the building. Nobody would have a problem if their clients weren't loitering. But again, I think it's the exact opposite. Ralph spoke to this. You're giving your clients the ability to shoot up and then go out, or you give them the syringes and you say, yeah, go do whatever you want. You should mandate that they do that there so that you can verify and see the disposal of the needles in a proper way. We have this problem all over the place, and it strikes against what we're trying to build in the Bronx, where we're trying to get homeowners to invest and become more stakeholders or invest more in their properties. But they get frustrated when they have to deal with these sorts of things. So again, when I'm just saying, you know, actually, I don't know what I'm saying, because it's just, I shouldn't say that. I do know what I'm saying. It's just that it becomes increasingly frustrating. And when we hear from presentations like this one, we're not heartless. We understand what the problem is. We want to help our people. But you have to build provisions within these contracts so that you are helping our people. You're not helping anybody by exchanging needles and then letting them go into St. Mary's Park and dispose of those needles so that nobody else in the city, our children included, can use those parks. To me, that's just careless. So again, I don't know what you can do now, but I think your future contracts should make stipulations or requirements that they have to do these things in the facility. That's all I have to say. Sorry.
So thank you. I mean, I heard exactly what what you're saying, and I appreciate that. Again, I'll say a few things I want to unpack there a little bit. You know, what you described was an OPC, a place where people can go and use it, discard it right there, be monitored. That's what you described. That's not what we have there right now. We want to see OPCs as a strategy that goes across the entire city, all right? And not just in the Bronx, not just in East Harlem. If you go back to the density map, you'll see that those are just the top 5 places where there's an identified need in the areas that are on that map. But there are another 10 that are on there as well across the city that are also high needs. And there's no neighborhood that's safe, that has hasn't had any overdoses. So we want to really see this as a citywide kind of initiative or process. We went with 2 other providers that were ready to go, had history, from other localities in providing this service. These were services that were already connected to the community. One of the places had been there for 22 years. They've been in the same neighborhood for 22 years. We're adding to their existing services. Again, speaking to kind of the provider and kind of neighborhood stuff, that's kind of that's something that definitely I think that would definitely like to kind of address and talk about and strategize more about. But what you described was an OPC, and we don't have an OPC in that space. I think you were referring to a support and connection center earlier as well. That's the one you talked about off of 80 and White Plains Road. So that one's not open yet, right? That happened, that plan was built out, several years ago. I can't really speak to that specifically. I do know that, there are expansions of services around kind of people who are experiencing crisis across, in the city and in the Bronx and East and Harlem as well, Upper Manhattan. But that center has not opened yet, and that kind of took place, some time ago under the previous administration. But it's not open yet, and it's not a diversion program. It's not really meant to be a diversion program where police are running into people who are doing something that is finable or arrestable, and they're being brought there instead. This is a completely voluntary service for people who are presenting with behavioral health challenges, in the community, and are brought to that space with a robust set of services, including nursing, primary care, primary care, mental health, substance use, basic needs, and they're actually able to stay for 5 days to connect them to housing as well. We're excited about that, that center opening up. We think it's a much needed service, but it is not open yet, but it will be created incredibly useful to individuals who are presenting in that neighborhood with behavioral health challenges. And again, these are people from the local area. What we find with OPCs is that people are not coming from Brooklyn to go to East Harlem to go to the OPC. These are people who are using drugs, who are in that area, have been there for a very long time, have had contact and been persons who were connected to the services that were there before the OPCs came. Again, we just offered another menu item to their list of services. I really do appreciate express concerns here today.
And really quickly, Dr. Mccray, I think as a collective, we're sharing and flagging our concerns with the OHMH. But the underlying tone here is, will there be an opportunity for future contracts where the OHMH is building and designing these contracts with community influence, right? With the community, as the OHMH goes through its selection process with build in provisions of community responsibility. So I think that that's kind of like the underlying tone here, that community responsibility provision to be embedded into.
I mean, I think we always want to seek, we want to increase, always have maximum transparency, include community as we think about kind of programmatic needs, policy needs. I think I'd have to get back around like provisions in the specific documents or not documents, but in the agreements that we have in the contracts. Like for example, like I said earlier, not only people who use drugs need clean syringes. So I don't know. I would want to think about that as what are we saying if we're saying you have to use a syringe here, because other people may have other uses that are not drug related. So I think I think thinking through those things is like something that is helpful. Also want to make sure that we're giving that we are being responsive to community as well. So
for sure.
Yes.
Hand that over to you, Chris.
Sure. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure you were good there. Jose Rodriguez had his hand up next. Jose, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Mccray. I want to echo the sentiments of Ralph and George, and particularly Chair Parks. I think that we really, yes, I am repeating most of what folks are saying. I think we really need to hold these providers a little more accountable. In addition to that, in the prior administration, there was an initiative set specifically in boards 1 and 2 to address, the needle exchange and the disposing of syringes, as well as harm reduction, and utilizing certain organizations like Acacia, Bronx Work, to do the outreach in the surrounding areas to ensure that those individuals, one, are not disposing their needles wherever they see fit, and properly disposing them and seeing if they do need additional care. Part of the problem is that, we have these.
We wrote a letter to organizations just to find out what was going on with the Knights of Vampire building. It's a institution in this area.
Hello.
And we wanted to make sure we just stood on top of what we expect, what we think might happen for its future, and so we can then convey it to the public, at a.
Sorry. There we go. Muted that mic.
Thank you so much, Chris. I truly appreciate it.
No problem.
Part of the problem as well is that, and we understand that, we Black and brown individuals, unfortunately, communities, underserved communities of color, that's where the need is. But when we consistently cite these particular programs and these providers within a certain geographical area close to one another in a specific cluster, we sort of create a breeding ground of additional things that just, go out into the surrounding community and just affect the overall quality of life. And I get it, the folks are from the neighborhood, and that's where the need is. But there has to be better oversight in the siting of these facilities, so that you don't create a cluster where you actually, folks are getting what they need in terms of the services. But then, you have individuals who have substance abuse problems, and, you sort of create an opportunity for other individuals to take advantage of those individuals, issues and problems, where you have a proliferation of drug use and drug dealing. So I think those are things really need to be in consideration. I mean, St. Mary's Park is horrible in terms of the needles that are just discarded. In addition to that, there's also Patterson Park, where you go there on any given day and you have individuals just laid out. And it's just, there has to be proper outreach. And I want to suggest that if the borough president, I know we've done this in East Harlem, where we really focus and create a robust interagency task force to not only address the issue at hand, but also look at some of the other issues. Are there social and emotional issues that individuals have? Is homelessness an issue? To see if we can involve other agencies to see how we can address the needs of those individuals coming into the community, who reside in the community and have these particular problems.
Thank you for your comment. It really sparked in me thinking, just to kind of to clarify also, that we've heard a lot of concern. We hear a lot of concerns around oversaturation, and it's come up a lot of times in the OPC conversation and in the certain service program conversation. And I think there's a need to kind of just also differentiate kind of these services from methadone clinics, which require individuals to come back every day, which is why we are pushing to, extend, we're advocating to have people, not have to come back to the clinic every day to get their methadone, but have extended methadone. We're also not responsible for, in the city, for placement of methadone clinics. That does lie with the state. And so I want to just kind of clearly differentiate some pieces. I know that there's some overlap, but also want to kind of put that out there in terms of when we're thinking about people who are kind of in the area, maybe who may be kind of wandering around, who may be actually coming from methadone clinics, which is a different situation from OPCs and SSPs.
No, you're absolutely correct. Thank you for the correction and the clarification. But just goes to my point of, whether it's interagency and or, a connection between the city and state, while, the citing of certain methadone clinics are oversight by the state. I think there just we need to have a better conversation between the city and the state. There needs to be a better conversation between interagency interaction, I should say, in terms of trying to deal with this overall issue, because one ties into the other. While they are separate, they still tie into one another and just upset the overall quality of life of a community. To George's point of the resurgence of the borough, trying to move forward instead of being stagnant in our progress. But thank you for the clarification. You're absolutely right. I appreciate that.
And I will say, just, not to belabor it anymore, but I think that what you're mentioning around kind of collaboration across city and state, I think is an important piece. I think right now, actually, we're at a moment of time right now where we have unprecedented relationship and connection with our state colleagues at the Office of Mental Health, Department of Health at the state, as well as the Substance Use Agency, OASAS, with the state as well. So we have really been, really working with our state partners in this regard. Also, as you all know, or maybe don't know, that around the OPC work, we have DOHMH collaborated with NYPD in the process, as well as with DHS around homelessness. When the OPC was there, we went into outreach to connect people that were in the area to the service, let people know that it was there. It was a resource for them to use. So I agree, there does need to be collaboration and intentionality around that. And I believe we are actually in that. We're headed in that direction. If not, we're headed in that direction. If not not in that area already of collaboration with our partners, both at the state level and other city agencies. Thank you.
All right, and I see Arlene Parks had raised her hand again, I think. So Arlene, go ahead and unmute if you have another question. All right, Deputy, I'd turn it to you if Arlene.
We had a strategic planning session at the time to put forth a strategy for urban renewal, and particularly Melrose Commons. And at the time, Melrose Commons and that whole area was burdened with a lot of programs of this type. And we had a strategic vision where programs of this type, in order to rebuild the hub and Melrose Commons, the community boards would be involved and would work with providers at the state and the city level in order to say where facilities should be placed so that you could have the quality of life and not have these programs all saturated in an area that would significantly feed the problem, because that's what we're doing here in the district. We're feeding the problem. We're causing significant quality of life issues and harming the ability of sustainability for the economic investments that are made in the district. So what I'm saying is we need unequivocally, a better approach, right? So that we all come together and that there is input before a facility is cited or a program is cited in the district, so that we don't have the impact of St. Mary's or a hub where you have to have significant police resources cited in an area to deal with the unintended consequences of citing these programs. It's not fair to the residents, it's not fair to the businesses and people who invest their money here, but we need to be able to help people, but we've got to do it at the expense, not at the expense of the progress that we want to make. And we need to include community boards so that we can be helpful in working together with elected officials to help all of us, so we all rise up.
Thank you.
Chris, I have another question. I'm sorry. I don't want to be
Sure.
What's the Dr. Mccray, what is the requirement now? They come in, these clients, they do what they do, they give you back the needle. For example, I got COVID shots. Every time I went to get a COVID shot, I had to wait at the facility because they wanted to see what my reaction was going to be after getting the COVID shot. Is there a requirement for these clients to stay there so that they're not tripping out on the streets of New York, or are they allowed to do whatever they want after they do what they need to do?
So community members who have utilized the OPC, particularly the safe injection site center area, there's a kind of there's a reception area. Afterwards, they do leave into that space and they're engaged by peers and by other staff in the facility.
All right, and I see one other hand raised. Shirley, go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. I was going to speak to Arlene's point, but I just want to do a follow-up with George about the question that you inquired about. So is that mandatory? I missed that. So are they're welcome to use that space, but they don't have to?
So they don't have to, but they're engaged in that space, yes.
Okay, but if they choose not to engage, they can just walk out and be into the community, to George's point, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also will mention, just as that, if they weren't in the facility using safely, they'd be out in the community using and still in the same space. Okay, understood. And I did want to follow up to Arlene's point and maybe take it a step further, because we see that in our district. We have projects cited that the community maybe is opposed to, and then they still get cited. And so, that's something that's just the logistics of it, right? That happens. But then moving forward, when we have projects cited that the community hasn't, wasn't really welcoming to, and then it happened and we're here and we're working together, we're trying to be a community together, and then there are issues that arise. I know for shelters, there's like community advisory boards that have or have not been successful at some point. And so to that point, I kind of want to request that there's some sort of mandatory follow-up, ongoing communication, and that there's actions taken from that when things are happening that the community isn't happy with in regards to these programs. So, we tried this and it didn't work out, and now is there room for communication, conversations to make changes to these established programs? So not only, we want to talk about these programs before they come into our communities, but once they're here, to have engaged conversations and for there actually to be a possibility for change, and not just, well, this is what it is, it's here now and you're stuck with it, rather than what can we do to be working with the community? Can we make some changes? Maybe we don't need to offer this. Maybe we can offer this instead. Maybe it's only during certain times.
from 9 to 3 instead of however long, from 9 to 5 or 6, being open to having these conversations even after they're cited, these programs are cited in our communities, and how can we affect change so that the community isn't opposed to it? Because, it's the reality of it. Like, we do have to provide these services to our residents, and we understand, but there needs to be a middle ground even after we have these programs in our communities so that we can find some sort of agreement. And I haven't seen that, at least on our end with the shelters that are cited in our district. We have these community advisory boards, and after we're cited, it's almost like we're putting on a facade. Nothing really happens. Our complaints aren't really heard, and that we're just having these meetings just to have them, but not that these agencies are willing to make any changes really.
So I think what I'll say is, again, I will reiterate. I mean, I personally, I think we as the Department of Health, we do value the feedback from community. I think that I want to put that out there. I think I would prefer to talk to my team, kind of go back and kind of see what makes the most sense. I don't want to commit to anything in this space. We're having a really thoughtful discussion with my team, but I'm always open to engaging community, and I think even learning today around like providers, like, to me, I want to know that stuff, right? That's important for information. So I'm happy to take this back to my team, but and I hear your concerns and question.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, Deputy, I do not see any other hands raised at this time.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Mccray. We will hold you to your commitment to community. And I think, echoing Jose's, idea of an interagency task force, I think that's an excellent idea as we develop strategies and build community and, help influence community provisions for service providers. I think that that's a crucial step forward in DOHMH showing its commitments to help heal our communities together. So we thank you for your time. Jose, you're leading the charge here, and we're here to help support an interagency task force, but definitely will support and follow the lead of the community boards and our elected officials in those efforts. So thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. Thank you everyone for your thoughtful questions and, really being honest and transparent about your concerns. Up next, we have Catherine and Joanne from the Sanitation Foundation and the Department of Sanitation to speak to us about the Bronx Cleanup Series, which is an item that I'm personally excited about, and I know most of you are as well. And so we'll hand it over to the sanitation team. Thank you so much for joining us today. Feel free to unmute yourselves.
I see, Julie, I see you are unmuted, but we're not hearing anything. Next to the microphone icon, if you click the arrow for audio options, just make sure it has that headset mic selected.
Wonderful. We can hear you, Julie. Great.
Can you hear me now? Okay. Sorry, I went through 4 different audio settings before I got to the magic one. So sorry about that. We don't use WebEx very frequently, but thank you so much for having us. I'm Julie Raskin. I'm the Executive Director of the Sanitation Foundation. I'll tell you a little bit more about us, and then Catherine will dive into the cleanup series. Unfortunately, Joan Burns-Daly was not able to join. She is the Director of Community Affairs at the Department of Sanitation, but she has had illness in her family, so she is out of the office today. But she does look forward to meeting you. She is new to her role, but she's not new to sanitation. So I know she is eager to join this meeting in the future. With that, I will share my screen. Let's see how this works. And then, and we will keep it brief. And I know this is a little bit of a lighter topic, but we're excited to have everybody's support and input as we prepare for this. So let's see. Let me know if this is working okay.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned, I lead the Sanitation Foundation. So we are a nonprofit. We're relatively new, we're a few years old, and we are DSNY's official nonprofit partner. So our mission is twofold. On the one hand, we're very focused on helping New Yorkers understand and appreciate the humans behind sanitation work, so really the essential sanitation workforce. And then we are helping DSNY and the city achieve the ambitious goal to send zero waste to landfills. So, you can sort of think of us as an extension of DSNY that's a little bit more flexible in our programming. We raise our own money to do our programming, so we don't use city resources, but we try to complement and supplement what DSNY can do and really engage New Yorkers, involve New Yorkers in sanitation work, and make them partners in keeping our city healthy, safe, and clean. So Catherine's going to share a little bit more, but I will just say we do a lot of programming, a lot of education programming. We do large-scale events. We had a sustainable fashion show a couple weeks ago. We do a food waste event. But our volunteer program is probably the fastest growing part of our portfolio. And we do a bunch of different activities, but for today, we're going to focus on a program that we piloted last summer in CB4. And I saw Paul here, who is our partner in that. And now we are bringing it back and making it bigger and better than ever. So with that, I will turn it over to Catherine, who manages our volunteer program.
Thank you so much. And can you hear me okay? All right, perfect. So yes, my name is Catherine Reed. I work with the volunteer program for the Sanitation Foundation. And we first, as Julie had mentioned, launched the Bronx Summer Cleanup Series last summer between July and August in partnership with the New York Yankees, Bronx Care, as well as Community Board 4 and the Department of Sanitation. And throughout the summer, we had 4 cleanup events that took place throughout Community Board 4. In that time frame of July and August. And at the events, we had 118 volunteers participate, and we collected over 4,000 pounds of litter. We structured this series as a competition. So the group that collected the most litter during their event actually received a Yankees VIP experience at the end of the event. And the winning group from that series was the group that worked on Mount Eden Parkway. And then these are just a couple of the stats as well as some photos of the different groups that we've partnered with. And if Julie, you want to go to that last slide, this is a picture of our winners. And then these are just a couple of stats about our volunteer impact with our various volunteer programming. We have a couple of different opportunities outside of just litter cleanups as well. So this kind of overviews what that impact looked like for 2021. And as Julie had mentioned, our volunteer program is growing. We're thrilled to be back doing the Bronx Summer Cleanup Series again this year. We're really grateful that the Yankees are going to be supporting the cleanup series again and awarding prizes to the winning cleanup group. We plan to expand this from 4 events that we had last year to 6 events this year, and we are going to be doing this across multiple community boards. So we need, your support both in identifying locations and then, of course, help promoting the events. And with that, we're confident that we'll be able to both increase participation as well as the impact of this cleanup series. So I think I'll turn it back over to Julie to just if there's any other next steps we need to discuss. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. And I think I'll put maybe Marisol or Tracy on the spot for a second, but to just speak about how you would like folks in this room to give you input on the location. So I think the process that we outlined is that we will solicit ideas from everybody here. We will compile a list, and then we will take that to DSNY Cleaning Division, who's very familiar with these locations, and they can help guide us on what would be the best places, the safest for volunteers and the most impactful. But does somebody from the Bronx Borough President's Office want to speak about the process of getting input?
So this is Marisol Halpern, and based on our conversations, we were trying to find the best way of communicating this information, which is one of the reasons why we had you present at the Borough Board, and we appreciate your presence. The idea is to have the community boards submit locations so that they can be considered by the Department of Sanitation as one of the problem areas to be addressed. And then the feedback from sanitation will determine the outreach to community volunteers, which again, the community boards and elected officials would be helpful in that matter. And that's basically where we left it. I think it's identifying the locations and how best to address the locations. The other advantage to this is knowing where the locations are. And in the event that they are not selected for cleanup by a particular volunteer group, sanitation would then also have them have it on their radar so they can monitor conditions at those locations. That's what I have to add at the moment. I don't know, Tracy, you want to add something else?
Hi, it's good morning. It's Tom. Tracy's on the phone. But just one thing that we should add is that this doesn't include lots, and it doesn't include properties that are not under the jurisdiction of DOS. So when the boards are submitting the intersections or the locations or the street fronts, just be mindful of the ownership of them so that they can be considered as part of the project. And Marisol, is there a date by which we want those locations in so that we have enough lead time with both sanitation and then working with the boards on volunteers?
I think that they want to start these projects in the summer, so I will leave that to the foundation, I think, to give us the date as to by when they need these locations. I'm not remembering right now what the timeline was.
Ideally, if we could get this in by mid-May, so if you want to say maybe Friday, May 13th, if that gives folks enough time, that's a little over 2 weeks. And should they send those to you, Marisol, or to Tom?
They could send them to me, and then we'll forward them to you, and we'll then move from there.
And just to clarify what's in the jurisdiction of the Department of Sanitation, it's basically streets and sidewalks. So just, not vacant lots, although DSNY does clean vacant lots. So if you do know of one, feel free to put that on the list. That's not a place we would send volunteers just because it's not super safe, but DSNY has the lot cleaning unit that can clean that out if it's appropriate. City blocks, as you saw, we did some of the step streets last year in CB4, intersections, just sort of general areas. We don't go into parks generally, but really anything that's on a sidewalk. And I believe the Yankees are going to be, the way we did it last year is they gave free tickets to everybody who volunteered. So even if you're not the winning team, but you show up, you would get a pass to go to a Yankees game. And then the winning team got a really amazing experience with the suite and getting to kind of go behind the scenes. So that's why we want to get started earlier in the summer too, so that we have more of the time to have the events.
And I'm wondering,
two hands up, but go ahead.
I'm wondering if Paul is still on the line so he can share really quickly his experience from last year.
I can step in because I actually did volunteer.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
you got Paul there. Paul, you there?
Yeah. So,
There we go.
we had, this came about because we were really interested in trying to help the sanitation department address some areas where we had a lot of issues. And they were pretty successful. I mean, we had 118 volunteers. We focused on a couple of step streets. I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but I think we have 12 different step streets in the district. And they're really important connection points, but also some of those step streets, unfortunately, they're adjacent to residential buildings, and unfortunately, we're not always the best stewards of where we live. So those were definitely highlight areas for us. And they were successful. I think what they do is there's a message here to get out to people to be stewards of where we live. You see people in the neighborhood cleaning up these areas. Some people ask questions. And we had great partnerships with both the Yankees and with Bronx Care and the Sanitation Foundation. And I think if we can do them borough-wide and get them more prevalent, I mean, I think everyone can acknowledge the fact that, listen, there's more litter out there. Our streets are not as clean as they could be. And it has nothing to do with Sanitation Foundation. I'll just be honest. I think that we're not respectful of where we live. And I think we need to do a better job. So.
And Paul, really quickly, because I have questions.
Yep.
Can you speak a little bit on how you were able to kind of get volunteers to sign up?
We did, we had a social media push. The Sanitation Foundation helped out. Because this was a board led endeavor, let's see, how do I put it? I very strategically coerced board members and told them that they had to attend all of the events since we were one of the sponsors. So, I mean, listen, if when everyone says, yeah, let's do these events, I'm like, well, then you all have to show up. And for the most part, I think at each event we had anywhere from 10 to 15 board members. I would have liked to see more people from the community, but again, we had never done them before. People were like, well, what are cleanups? So, I think for a first, foray into this arena, I think it was a good turnout. And in terms of the locations, just in case you're curious, so what we did, and I wouldn't necessarily say that you do this, but we actually we did a Survey Monkey that we put out on social media, and we had people submit locations, and then what we did is that we looked at all the locations, and then we looked at, I think, the 6 most popular, and then we decided from there. So, not that I'm saying you have to do that, but that's just that was our process and how we got there.
Creative. Great. Any questions? Okay.
So, Deputy, one of the requests has been to possibly move the date for the request to maybe May 22nd. I mean, it would work a lot better for us as well. We're going to be in the middle of Bronx Week. So if that's okay, that would work for some of the boards as well as our office.
Yeah, that's great. And I was also going to say, when you're sending in location ideas, if you could also, if you have any opinions on days of the week and times, we did them all pretty much on Saturdays, which works for some folks, but we were thinking maybe a Friday afternoon would be good, especially if we have youth involved. So just consider that too. We welcome suggestions and we're pretty flexible.
All right, and Deputy, I do see a few questions. Ken Brown dropped one in the chat that I think is quick. He said, how many locations can each board submit?
Are the possibilities endless with our submission, Julie, or?
Sure, I would like to know what that means, but we'll see it, yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then I see George Torres had his hand raised first, so George, go ahead.
Hey, I have, I guess, a question and a statement. But first, I hope you guys could get Catherine a room with a window. It looks like she's in a broom closet there, so I'm worried for her ventilation. My cynicism as a city employee for a long time is that we've identified a problem with the sanitation department not being able to clean up certain sites. Paul identified, you guys really looked at step streets. You actually had some of those in some of your presentations, which have been a nebulous area because every time people make complaints about sort of these areas, you get DOT, sanitation, and Parks Department pointing fingers at each other saying, oh no, it's not my responsibility, it's their responsibility. Yet here you have the Sanitation Foundation actually taking care of these facilities, which just, I'm curious as a someone that has to deal with the city budget, we should be advocating for more employees, because volunteerism, as good as it is, requires, free work, and not everybody's always willing to sign up for these things. As you said it yourself, you have to sort of bribe these people to do these things. Paul just said that he had to sort of maybe tell a white lie in order to get engagement from his community board members. So my question becomes, my question is, during the pandemic, and I think the new commissioner for sanitation, actually, this was her responsibility. We had this sort of program that was supposed to go out and clean up facilities that were being contracted out to non-for-profits. Is that your new responsibility? Is that program no longer exists anymore? I'm sorry that I don't remember the name of that program, but I'm trying to remember the non-for-profit. They did reach out to us. We did submit, and none of those sites were cleaned up. So, I can tell you I've been in the city and I've been going to borough boards for well over 20 years. I can tell you in every community board, because I worked at CAU when I was in the Bloomberg administration, we're not reinventing the wheel here. The Department of Sanitation, your superintendents know, in Community Board 12, Edson Avenue, Webster Avenue, historically problematic areas that never get addressed. And yet, you guys ask for submissions. Like I said, the question I have is that program no longer operational? And is this the new sort of way to deal with that? Because they were hiring people, if I'm not mistaken, and paying them a salary in order to run this program. And they were even asking for, not volunteers, but for us to make suggestions and advertise that. Whatever became of that program, and if it's no longer operational, are you guys, taking over in that regard?
I appreciate your questions and your frustration as well. So I think you're talking about the Cleanup Corps, or the New York City Cleanup Corps. It's a completely separate program. I'm honestly not too familiar with it. There may be other folks on this call who are. It's not directly affiliated with the sanitation department. But I think you're right. I mean, you're talking about a deeper issue, and it's about allocation of city resources, and it's about jurisdiction and responsibility, and we can't ignore that. And I don't think this is not a substitute for that. This is a separate, it's a different approach. We're not claiming to solve the problem of trash or of cleanliness. What we're really focused on, and what we have been always, is community engagement and partnership, and capturing hearts and minds. And I think Paul's being a little bit cynical in his experience recruiting volunteers, because I think once we got the word out and sort of got the ball rolling, and especially when folks heard about free Yankees tickets, it sort of built on itself. And I think having you all involved now too, just getting the word out, whether it's through social media or flyers or community meetings, it's a really fun experience. It's a feel-good experience, and I think a lot of these community cleanups sprung up during the pandemic too, because I think people want to feel some agency and some ability to help out especially when you're feeling helpless. But the problem of, city resources not being sufficient to attack this problem in a permanent way is real. And, we're officially affiliated with DSNY, so I sort of shy away from making a lot of policy statements or political statements, but it's, I would encourage you to talk to council members and folks that have input into the city's budget about properly funding DSNY to do, more litter basket service. I know that is coming back. That was something that had been cut during the pandemic, and that definitely contributed to the litter problem. But you're absolutely right. So I don't think this is we're not naive about what we're trying to do here. This is much more of a, getting folks involved, especially youth, because once you've cleaned up other people's litter, you're never going to litter again. You're going to think twice about that, and hopefully be an ambassador in your community.
Julie, thank you so much for taking that question. And I just wanted to flag that NYC Sanitation, unfortunately, isn't on this call, but also flag that they have been, the agency has been super responsive to all of our calls. So If there are any concerns, let us know. We call sanitation. They are fully responsive. But to Julie's point, and I think Paul highlighted this, it's an opportunity for our community to be civically engaged. And the Sanitation Foundation offering us the resources and the tools to make that happen. And I hope we can take this opportunity. I myself will be signing up. So looking forward to the CB submissions, and we will reach out. Marisol and Tom will send a mass email to folks just reminding them of this initiative, and looking forward to the responses so we can forward them over to sanitation for the May 22nd deadline. No? Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on to announcements? I know we're cutting our time short, but we have some exciting announcements that we want to share before ending. Any questions?
Robert had his hand raised, but just lowered it, so I think we're good.
For the sake of organize, okay, I just wanted to point out that Paul did such a good job of getting people out. Last year, we ended up actually with 2 volunteers from some suburb in New Jersey, and those guys, they enjoyed getting their Yankee tickets. Okay, and just the Mount Eden malls are parks. They do some. The sanitation will help out with some park situations, and that's how come we actually won that, which I was actually part of. And the step streets, a lot of times in our neighborhoods, the step streets, they're supposed to be cleaned up by landlords because they're adjacent to properties and to buildings. It's not just DOT or the parks or sanitation. So this is the ugly mess that we have here. And this is how come we had to end up volunteering to be able to clean these up. That's basically it, okay?
Thank you, Robert. Any other questions? I'm not, Chris, let me know if I missed any in the chat.
I don't believe so. I think those were answered in real time during the answers.
Great.
So I think we're good. I don't see any other hands raised.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Julie and Catherine, for joining us today. Thank you for revamping and expanding the Bronx Cleanup Series. And I'm looking forward to see who wins this series this year. So I'm super competitive. So I'm looking forward to joining my local community board.
Challenge taken.
All right, CB4. All righty. Thank you so much again. Thank you for joining us. Looking forward to Oops, I muted myself. Next up, we have some exciting announcements. I want to start off by acknowledging Denim Day. I am wearing my denim. I know nationally it is recognized. It is observed on the last Wednesday of April. Last year, it landed on April 28th. And so to all of you that wore Denim Day yesterday, thank you for sending and amplifying the message of standing against sexual assault apologists and supporting our survivors. Today, really quickly, later on this afternoon, the Bronx Borough President's Office, along with our community partners, we will be hosting a Denim Day Bronx March. And collectively, we will march on against sexual assault and stand in solidarity with our survivors. So feel free to join us today at 3 p.m. at the corner of Grand Concourse and Mount Eden Parkway. The march will start promptly at 4 p.m. So wear your denim proudly and join us. It's a beautiful day for a march that stands for a good cause. So just a reminder of that. Arbor Day, also nationally observed on the last Friday of April. And so that falls tomorrow. However, today, on the day before Arbor Day, the Bronx Borough President and the Manhattan Borough President, Mark Levine, will hold a press conference literally between the two boroughs. Where else than in the middle of High Bridge over the Harlem River. And we will be partnering up with our environmental groups and city park advocates to support the vision to plant 1 million more trees across the 5 boroughs over the next decade. And this is in a push for a green, healthy, equitable, livable, and climate resilient city. And so I encourage you all, if you're nearby, if you're in the area, or you're able to step out, to join us today at 1 p.m. in the middle of High Bridge, the entrance on 170th and University. So I know that it's a jam-packed day, but if you're out and about, please join us for both events. And last but not least, but the announcement that I'm most excited about, aside from the Bronx Cleanup Series, it's Bronx Week. So Bronx Borough President Vanessa L. Gibson will host her very first and the 50th year edition of Bronx Week. Bronx Week is back and in its full glory, with back-to-back events throughout the entire borough starting next week. This year's theme is History is in the Making. As you all know, we started this year making history by electing our very first Black woman to lead our borough, and we haven't stopped there. As a collective, as a borough, we continue to break barriers and grounds to create spaces and redefine our narrative. And so this Bronx Week has been a creation of love, and it has been cultivated around that theme of affecting change and building community and community. And so we'll kick it off with a presser on Monday, May 2nd at 11 a.m. at the Northeast Bronx YMCA. Love that place. If you haven't been there, please stop by and pay a visit. It is beautiful. And so during the press conference, we'll reveal our 2022 Bronx Walk of Fame inductees. This presser is open to the public. I am going to drop the link in our chat so that you will have more information regarding the participation, RSVPs. The presser is on May 2nd, but we'll officially kick off the week on May 5th. There will be a series of events from every sector of the community, including senior activities, support for small businesses. It also falls on National Small Business Week, and so we'll have an event with our Department of Small Business Services. We'll have family and health events, finance and capital access events, as well as a fun silent disco and so much more. There will also be a virtual component to ensure inclusivity, as we know that COVID cases unfortunately are on the rise, but we want to ensure that the entire borough participates. We will have a digital calendar, but we will also have printed versions to distribute throughout the borough. So we hope to count on you all and your offices to help us disseminate the information, by next Monday, you'll have full access to the printed versions of the calendar of events. And this year, in the spirit of inclusivity, we've also translated our calendar of events into Spanish. So we look forward to celebrating with you all. Again, super exciting. The theme is exciting. Our guests are exciting, and so are our series. And so we look forward to having you all. I don't know if there are any questions regarding those announcements, but if there aren't any, again, encourage you to come out for Bronx Week. Looking forward to seeing you all, and I'll open the virtual floor to anyone else who has announcements. Comments, excitements, expressions? Oh, good. Any announcements from our agency partners?
Yes, hi. Good morning, afternoon. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Melissa Blakely, and I am one of the outreach liaisons for the Department of Finance. I am a new face of the outreach team. I am usually joined by Michael Sharp. He's busy. He was a one-man team. Now we have a plethora of new members added onto our team. So if there's any assembly members, city council members, and or their staff, the Department of Finance is here. We have reached out to most of all city council members and their staff, who should be expecting a package from the Department of Finance with just all the new resources and services that we're offering, most specifically surrounding the rent freeze. In the light of, the circumstances that we're dealing with today, the memorandum is up. A lot of people are dealing with evictions and, unable to pay their rents. Please let it be known that the Department of Finance is pushing that information to the Bronx residents. So any kind of outreach liaison events, please feel free to reach out to us. I can drop a link in the chat to where that you can request us to attend any of your events that you would like us to go to. You can fill out the form, and then we'll be present with that that you need. So as long as we can find out, exactly what do you need us for, the demographics, but definitely we are here to offer our services up to you and everyone, available in this meeting. So nice to meet everyone. I am new to the team and I will drop all of our information in the chat.
Welcome, Melissa, and congratulations on your new role. Looking forward to working with you.
All right, Deputy, I don't see any other hands raised.
Great. So with that, we will conclude our Borough Board Service Cabinet meeting. Thank you all so much for your attention, your questions, flagging your concerns, and coming together as always on a monthly basis to address the issues that we have in our borough, but to find real solutions. So thank you all for your partnership. Be well. Hope to see you during our Denim Day Bronx March, Arbor Day, but most importantly, Bronx Week. Looking forward to meeting you all in